Devarshi Pitribhutanam
Devarshi Pitribhutanam
Dharmasya Chaparayanam
Dharmasyaya Parayanam
Vishnu Dvija Kriyamulo
Vishnu Yamulo
Yagyo Dharma Maya Puman
Yagyodama Maya Puman
Devarshi Pitribhutanam
Devarshi Pitribhutanam
Dharmasya Chaparayanam
Dharmasya Chaparayanam
Vishnu Dvija Kriyamulo
Vishnu Dijakriyamulo
Yagyo Dharma Maya Puman
Yagyodama Maya Puman
Devashi Pitrabhutana
Devarshi Pitribhutanam
Dharmasya Chaparayanam
Dharmasya Chaparayanam Om Namo Bhag. Sorry. Just 1 minute. Tavad. Tavad. Vishnu Dijakriyamulo
Vishnu Kriyamulo
Yagyo Dharma Maya Puma
Yagya Dharma Maya Puma
Devarshi Pitra Bhutana
Devashi Pitrabhutana
Dharmasya Cha Parayanam
Dharmasya Chaparayanam
Vishnu Dijakriyamulo
Vishnu Kriyamulo
Yagyo Dharma Maya Puma
Yagya Dharma Maya Puma
Devarshi Pitra Bhutana
Devashi Pitrabhutana
Dharmasya Cha Parayanam
Dharmasya Chaparayanam Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Bija of the Brahmins and Kshatriyas, Kriyamula, whose root is the performance of Yajna, and the ritualistic ceremonies mentioned in the Vedas. Yajna, personified Yajna. Lord Vishnu, who is known as the Yajna Purush. Dharmamaya, full of religious principles. Puman, the Supreme Person. Devarishi, of the demigods. And great rishis. Like Vyasadeva. And Narada. Pitr, of the forefathers. Bhutanam, and of all other living entities. Dharmasya, of the religious principles. Cha, also. Parayanam, the shelter. Translation. The basic principle of Brahminical culture is to satisfy Lord Vishnu, the personification of sacrificial and ritualistic ceremonies. Lord Vishnu is the personified reservoir of all religious principles, and he is the shelter of all the demigods, the great Pitas, and the people in general. When the Brahmins are killed, no one will exist to encourage the Kshatriyas to perform yajnas, and thus the demigods, not being appeased by yajna, will automatically die. Repeat after me. The basic principle of Brahminical culture is to satisfy Lord Vishnu, the personification of sacrificial and ritualistic ceremonies. Lord Vishnu is the personified reservoir of all religious principles, and he is the shelter
and is the shelter
of all the demigods,
of all the demigods,
the great Pitas,
the great Pitas,
and the people in general.
and people in general.
When the Brahmanas are killed,
When the Brahmanas are killed,
well, no one will exist
no one will exist
to encourage the Kshatriyas
to encourage the Kshatriyas
to perform yagyas,
perform yagyas,
and thus the demigods,
and thus the demigods,
not being appeased by yagya,
not being appeased by yagyas,
will automatically die.
will automatically die.
Prabhupada's purport. Since Vishnu is the central point of Brahminical culture, Hiranyakashipu's plan was to kill Vishnu, for if Vishnu was killed, naturally the Brahminical culture would also be lost. With Brahminical culture lost, Yajna would no longer be performed. And for want of Yajna, the regular distribution of rainfall would cease. Jagyad Bhavati Parajanya. Thus there would be disturbances all over the world. And naturally the demigods would be defeated. From this verse we get a clear indication of how human society is disturbed when the Vedic Aryan civilization is killed and the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies performed by the Brahmins are stopped. Kalo Shudra Sambhava. Because the population of the modern world consists mostly of Shudras, the Brahminical culture is now lost and is extremely difficult to reestablish in a proper way. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has recommended the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, which will revive Brahminical culture very easily.
Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalau nasteva 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 gateranyatha.
Because of the increment in demoniac population, people have lost Brahminical culture, nor is there a Kshatriya government. Instead, the government is a democracy in which any Shudra can be voted into taking up the governmental reins and capture the power to rule. Because of the poisonous effects of Kali Yuga, the Shastra, Srimad Bhagavatam 12:2-13, says, Dasyu Prayeshu Rajasu. The government will adopt the policies of Dasyus, or plunderers. There will be no instructions from the Brahmanas, and even if there are Brahminical instructions, there will be no Kshatriya rulers who can follow them. Aside from Satya Yuga, even formerly, in the days when demons were flourishing, Hiranyakashipu planned to destroy the Brahminical culture and the Kshatriya government and thus create chaos all over the world. Although in Satya Yuga this plan was very difficult to execute, in Kali Yuga, which is full of Shudras and demons, the Brahminical culture is lost and can be revived only by the chanting of the Mahamantra. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement, or the Hare Krishna movement, has been inaugurated to revive Brahminical culture very easily so that people may become happy and peaceful in this life and prepare for elevation in the next. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya quotes this verse from the Brahmanda Purana. Vipra jagyadi mulam tu Hare ityasaram matam Hare eva hi sarvasya mulam samyam mato nipa. O king, the demons think that Hari, Lord Vishnu, exists because of the Brahmins and Jagat. But factually, Hari is the cause of everything, including the Brahmanas and Jagat. Therefore, through the popularizing of Hari Sankirtan, or the Sankirtan movement, the Brahminical culture and Kshatriya government will automatically come back, and people will be extremely happy. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Gnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Jati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagajat Agana Raghunatham Vitam Sajivam Sadvaita Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Manchakapatrubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Powerful purport, bro.
Hmm?
Very powerful purport.
Oh, yes. Brilliant. Prabhupada is talking about Mr. Trump in this purport. and Hiranyakashipu. I'm not a fan of Mr. Trump. It's not quite as bad as Hiranyakashipu.
Yeah.
One important point is that people in the material world we come here to forget Krishna. So, but there's still some remembrance of Krishna. It's Kali Yuga, but everybody knows God, knows about God, even if they deny His existence or don't believe in Him. These are it's not that, the atheists are the most ridiculous people in the world. And the worst atheists are the ones who deny the existence of God with logic and reason and science. Like as they're intelligent men and women, but from the material point of view, some of them, and they speak like the impersonalists, they speak in a very intelligent way. The ones who are actually knowledgeable in some shastras, and they can speak very intelligently, and the people are easily fooled by them. So the outright atheists, they're all atheists, whether they're impersonalists or just out and out scientific Darwin theory, modern atheist or whatever, ranting and raving on the street corner. There's no God. They're all atheists. Atheist means they don't want God. Everyone believes in God. Everyone knows that God exists because we all come from God. We're all part and parcel of Krishna, and nothing exists except for Krishna. And there's some memory of Krishna at the heart of every soul, every conditioned soul. There's some innate awareness that God exists, but atheist just means that you can say, I don't believe in God. The real meaning of atheist, they don't want God. They don't want there to be a God, because if there's God, then I'm not God. And if there's God, then I'm not independent. I can't do whatever I want. So I don't want there to be a God. And especially I don't want God to be a person that I'm responsible to, a person like I was responsible to my mother and father. I was responsible to my teachers in school. I was responsible to the officers when I was in the army. I was responsible to higher ups when I worked at Apple, and I was responsible to. I don't want to be responsible. I definitely don't want to be ultimately responsible, like irrevocably. All these other responsibilities, I could take them or I don't have to take them. But if there's God, that means ultimate responsibility without any question. So I don't want that. But that's the real meaning of atheist. And the more intelligent they are, the more fancy language, theory, logical theories, or science they use to prove, or so-called prove there is no God, the more, in a way, the more dangerous they are. They can be convincing to other people. Anyway, it's one of my rants, but in the material world, people don't, and even those who are a little bit religious or pretty religious, they think, well, religion, that's the religious side of my life, or the spiritual side of my life, and the other side of my life is my this and my that, my this and my that. So there's different sides to my life, but life means Krishna. Krishna gives life, and life. There's no two sides to life. There's only the religious or the godly side of life. Everything else we do as devotees, we do in the material world out of necessity, just to struggle along in the material world, just to get along and support our support our material desires. But we know that ultimately nothing matters except for Krishna. But really there is only Krishna. There is only religious life, like life in Goloka Vrindavan. Life in Goloka, they don't, they're, yeah, it's everything is about Krishna. There's no distinction between taking care of the cows or churning the butter and worshiping God or loving Krishna. For us, aspiring devotees in here, it's also like that. There is no distinction between religious life and non-religious life. There's no, if you're religious, religion just means to follow the laws of God. Follow the laws of God. The laws of God are all encompassing. Every second, every minute, every day, every aspect of our lives. Like in married life, there's from the devotees early devotees in ISKCON learn from the beginning about Garbhadan Samskar and all the different activities, devotional activities that are involved in family life. And generally, people think, okay, we have our religion, but in our husband and wife and our family life, nobody really can tell us what to do. We're not under some laws in our family life. And when I go to church, then I'm under the laws of God, or in general. But for the devotees, there's no distinction between the religious life and secular life. There is no secular life. There is only Krishna conscious living. And I heard Prabhupada talking in a lecture this morning, and he was talking about, and people think, or religion is this mystical thing, and people often use terms like mystic or mystical or uh, uh, spiritual. So it's spiritual. It's the most, but Prabhupada was making the point that it's not mystical. Krishna wants you to come back to him. And our natural position is as servants of Krishna. Uh, and he said, there's nothing mystical about it. It's mystical means anything that's, you can't knock on wood, or you can't buy it with money, or you can't drive a car on the highway. That's material, and anything to do with God, or anything like that, that's mystical. But Prabhupada is said it a few times. He said, what's mystical? He says, you're missing your relationship with God, and now you're reestablishing yourself in that. Krishna wants you as his devotee, and your real desire, if you wake up to it, if you're willing to wake up to it, your real desire is to be a devotee also. What's the question of mystical? And it's just, and ultimately everything in Krishna consciousness is very straightforward, like that, like Tulsi Devi. When we first, Western devotees first heard about Tulsi Devi, everybody accepted immediately, because Prabhupada told everyone that Tulsi Devi is a pure devotee of Krishna in the form of a plant. Nobody here knew anything about a pure devotee of Krishna being a plant, but everybody accepted it right away because Prabhupada said it, and everybody very dutifully did a circumambulation of Tulsi and did artik for Tulsi every day, and watered Tulsi and thought of her as a pure devotee of Krishna. But it was a new concept, in a lot of ways, like an unusual concept, just like in the beginning for me when I first heard Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's a young, small cowherd boy. He's blue, and he goes out and takes care of cows every day with his friends. Well, that was a new concept for me. The only way I ever heard about God was God on the throne saying, you go to heaven, you go to hell, you go to heaven, you go to hell. Anyway, so these are all, but because
But you accepted.
What?
But you accepted.
Yeah, when you hear it from a pure devotee of Krishna, if I had read it in a book, if I had gotten a book on Hinduism before I met the devotees, and I just read it, the Hindus believe that God is I would have been, oh, well, okay, that's the Hindu mythology. But because I heard it from Prabhupada and Prabhupada's representatives, when I went to the temple, then I was like, well, never heard that one before, but okay, why not? I don't know who God is. I mean, why couldn't he be a coward boy? Why not? He's God. And that's one thing Prabhupada says, frequently said. I tell this all the time, and referred to it just the other day. Prabhupada talking to people in interviews and things, and they're like, he did that with the Protestant ministers and preachers in the garden, in his garden in Los Angeles. There's a video of it. And you said, in other times too, he said, you say you want to know who God is. You don't know who God is. I say Krishna is God. Take it. So I was kind of
This
like
was
that.
where, Prabhu?
What?
Where it was? Which place?
In Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
Prabhupada sat out there in the garden and in the evenings, and he would have people. Sometimes there would be guests there. There's one occasion, you can see it in the video, there's 6 or 7 of these respectable elders in various Protestant churches that he's talking to, like older men, like respectable people in their church, like scholars, priests, ministers, maybe higher position, and at least 1 or 2 of them apparently knew Prabhupada previously. You can see anyway, but they're all respected people in their church, but they're all like discussing who is God, and Prabhupada. I say, you don't know who Krishna is God. You don't know who God is. I say Krishna is God. You say you don't know who God is. If you have an alternative for who God is, put him forward. We can talk about it. But otherwise, I say Krishna is God. Take it. And ultimately, it's not like a really strong way to argue from just the logical point of view, like debate. Like you can't go into a debate in a college or debate society and they give a few arguments and then say something like, I say it's like this, take it. You can't do that. They'll be like, well, Mr. Blum, that's not exactly the way debate works. You have to convince us by logic and reason, not just like that's how little kids argue. But if you're so certain of yourself, if you're from India and you're arguing about the best way to get to Hartford from here, and neither one of you has driven there before. You don't have, anyway, something like that. You're just talking about what's the best way to do something in Boston that I'm very familiar with, and you're not really familiar with at all. But you have some interest, some idea. And then I hear you talking about it, and then I say, look, it's not like that. It's like this. Take it. And so if you're really sure of yourself, you really know something that other people don't know, and Prabhupada directly knows Krishna face to face in a very intimate relationship. And if he says, I say Krishna is God, take it, then in a case like that, that is a valid way of settling a dispute. Ordinarily, it's not considered very good argumentative procedure. But anyways, and another thing on that, in that conversation in the garden in Los Angeles, the Prabhupada was talking about eating meat. And these are all Christian people, Christian preachers. And he did the same thing with Cardinal Danilou in Paris. I don't know if you've ever seen that video or heard that talk, but it's Prabhupada is talking about a cardinal, and a cardinal is about like a big man, like a top GBC in the Catholic hierarchy, and the big man. He's supposed to be, you would assume, kind of advanced in spiritual life. He's a cardinal, and definitely knowledgeable in their Shastra, and however limited it is. But yeah, but Prabhupada was talking with him, and he kept arguing about not eating meat to this cardinal. And the cardinal is, well, yeah, you know, I can't do the French accent at all, but he's a very fussy accent, and he just said, well, we think that eventually he got around to there is no soul in the animal. So we think there's nothing wrong with killing the animal. No soul. He's not a person. He's not like you and me. You can kill him and eat him. Of course, Prabhupada's argument to that was that when a human being is a baby, a small child, they're also almost like an animal. They can't talk, they can't think in very advanced way. All they think about is putting something in their mouth, anamaya, no matter what it is. And but if would you say, well, he's almost like an animal, we can kill him? Or if a father has different sons, and one of them is retarded, mentally slow, and the other son can't do anything to help anybody, and the other son say, well, father, this your other son, he's pretty useless, he can't do anything, why don't we kill him and eat him? Anyway, so Prabhupada equated that he made it so ridiculous but so forceful argument that it's so easy to see the fallacy. Yeah, the animals are less advanced than the human beings in every way, and not in physical ways. They can run faster and jump higher and stronger in many cases, but intellectually and developmentally, they're less developed than the human being. But does that mean we should kill them and eat them? No. Everyone is dear to Krishna. All Krishna's sons and daughters, parts and parcels, are dear to Krishna. And yeah, and Prabhupada's argument to the cardinal at that time was the first thing by Jesus Christ is, thou shalt not kill. And so he was arguing that with the cardinal, and he was arguing that with the Protestant preachers in his garden. And he wouldn't let it go. He was it's not like he just said it once, but he was going on and on about it. And then one of them said, well, maybe we could start talking about some higher subject matter now. And Prabhupada was like, what question is there of higher subject matter if you can't even understand this most basic point? If you don't accept this most basic point of spiritual life, of religious life. Anyway, that's and Prabhupada always argued like that with whatever Christians he met. Anyway, so Prabhupada makes the point, the purport Prabhupada starts by saying, since Vishnu is the central point of Brahminical culture, Hiranyakashipu's plan was to kill Vishnu. For if Vishnu were killed, naturally the Brahminical culture would also be lost. What's the problem with the Brahminical culture? The Brahminical culture is bad for a despotic, completely selfish ruler like Hiranyakashipu. It's bad for him because if that means there's laws that he's expected to obey, and also that he's not independent of. So there's these laws of Brahminical culture. The Brahmins are dependent on Vishnu. So what I should do is I guess should get rid of Vishnu. Sort of logic, but and it would work in the material world in so many situations. People are always trying to get rid of someone, an authority who's too restrictive. They say this person is just too restrictive. I know what we should do. Should get rid of them, and then we'll be much freer to do what we want. That can work in the material world. But it can't work with Vishnu because you can't kill Vishnu. Krishna cannot be killed. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. For the soul, there's neither birth nor death. The soul is unborn, infallible, cannot be slain when the body is slain. The individual soul, we cannot be killed. And Krishna, we come from Krishna. Krishna cannot be killed. It's axiomatic. Just a very basic, pretty easy to understand point in spirit, in Krishna conscious philosophy. You can't kill God. God is eternal. That means it means he's never born, never dies. He's always been there. He always will be there, and he is eternally existent. He's the source of everything. He's a source of my existence, and so you can't kill Vishnu. But the demons, they become so like Hiranyakashipu. They become so proud and puffed up because they do have some material power. Hiranyakashipu stood on one foot for 1,000 years with his arms raised above his head, and he's so standing there so long that he just got all the flesh and everything got eaten away, got on his body, got covered up by a big anthill. Didn't even know he was there anymore, and but his life kept his life by his yogic power. He kept his life circulating in his bones. The science of today would never accept that, but they want to. There's a lot of things they won't accept. There's so many things they don't accept. There's so many well documented memories of people who remember past lives, at least part of one past life. It's like well-documented cases, and so many well-documented cases by any rigorous intellectual scientific standard of people who have seen God or had divine revelations from God. There's so many reliable reports of many people like that throughout history of reincarnation or direct experience with God or angels, but the scientists will be like, nope, doesn't exist. You're all wrong. It's like, well, how can you say that? It's like, what's your basis for saying that? Like if I say, you've never been to Antarctica. I've been to Antarctica. I can tell you all about it, and you're like, nope, doesn't exist. It's like it's complete. It's like it's ludicrous. It's ridiculous.
Stubborn obstinacy.
Yeah, they're just so obstinate. I was like that when I was a little kid. I'm still like that to some degree, although I've learned a little bit. in my life. But when I was a little kid, I was known. My sister will tell you. She's older than me. She remembers. Just really obstinate, and they argue about anything, just for the sake of arguing. And the scientists are like that. They're just childish. This argument. Nope. They'd be like, nah, 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 nah. I can't hear you. It's so childish. It would be funny if we weren't dealing with such like really serious matters. God doesn't exist. That's a pretty serious thing you're saying. And well, that's what I say. Tough for you. It's like, how can you argue with somebody like that? You can't. Okay, we better stop that. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.